गृहीतया आत्मसंस्थं मनः कृत्वा न किञ्चिदपि चिन्तयेत्.
Gradually, step by step, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence sustained by full conviction, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else.
यतो निश्चलति मनश्चञ्चलमस्थिरं ततस्ततो नियम्येत तात्मन्येव वशं नयेत्.
From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self.
युज्यनैवं सदात्मानं योगी विगतकल्मष सुखेन ब्रह्मसंस्पर्श मात्यन्तं सुखमश्नुते.
Did you miss a verse, Mataji? I think we were on verse 27.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes, I did. Sorry, I'll recite the text 27. Prashantamanasam yenam yoginam sukhamuttamam upeti shantarajasam brahma bhutam kalmasham.
The yogis whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is freed from all reactions of past deeds.
Yujanaivam sadatmanam yogi vigata kalmasha sukhena brahma sansparsha matyantam sukhamashnute.
Thus, the self-controlled yogi, constantly engaged in yoga practice, becomes free from all material contamination and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in transcendental loving service to the Lord.
Sarvabhutastamatmanam sarvabhutani chatmani ekshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshana.
A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere.
Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvacha mai pashyati tasyaham na pranashyami sacha me na pranashyati.
For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me.
Sarvabhuta sitam yo mam bhajati gatvamastita sarvatha vatmanopi sa yogi mai vartate.
Such a yogi who engages in the worshipful service of the Supersoul, knowing that I and the Supersoul are one, remains always in me in all circumstances.
Atmopamyena sarvatra samam pashyati yojuna sukham va yatim va dukham sa yogi paramo mata.
He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna.
Yo yam yogastvaya proktaha samyena madhusudan etasyaham na pashyami chanchalam tyatasitim stiram.
Arjuna said, "O Madhusudana, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady."
Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavadradam tasyaham nigraham manye vayo riva dushkuram.
The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna, and to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind.
Asanshayam mahabaho manodurnigraham chalam abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyane chagruhyate.
Lord Krishna said, "O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment."
Asanyatatmana yogo dushprapa iti me mati vashatmatna tu yatata shakyo vaptu mupayata.
For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work, but he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion.
Ayati hi shraddhayo peto yogacha litamanasa aprapya yoga sansiddhi kam katim Krishna gachati.
Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist who, in the beginning, takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness, and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism?"
Kachino bhayaviprastash chinna brahmeva nashyati apratistha mahabaho vimudho brahmana pati.
O mighty armed Krishna, does not such a man who is bewildered from the path of transcendence fall away from both spiritual and material success and perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere?
Etat me sanshayam Krishna chetu maharsha sheshata tvadanya sanshayasya chaitana yupapadyate.
This is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. But for you, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt.
Parthanaiveha nama Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Parthanaiveha namutra vinashastasya vidyate nahi kalyana krut kascheta durgati tata gacchati.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Son of Buddha, the transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil."
Prapya punya kutam loka nishitva shashvati sama suchinam shrimatam gehe yoga prasto bijayate.
The unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy.
Atva yoginam bhavati timatam तद्विदुर्लभतरं लोके जन्म यदीदृशम्.
Or, if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, he takes birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly, such a birth is rare in this world.
तत्र तं बुद्धिसंयोगं लभते पूर्वदेहिकं यत् ते च ततो भूयः संसिद्धो गुरुनन्दन.
On taking such a birth, he revives his divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Guru.
पूर्वाभिसानितैनैव हीयते यवशोऽपि स जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य शब्दब्रह्मादिवर्तते.
By virtue of divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principles even without seeking them. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist stands always above ritualistic principles of the scripture.
प्रयत्नादयत्मानस्तु योगी संशुद्धकिल्बिष अनेकजन्मसंसिद्धस्ततो याति परां गतिम्.
And when the yogi engages himself with sincere endeavor in making further progress, being washed of all contaminations, then ultimately achieving perfection after many, many births of practice, he attains the supreme goal.
तपस्वीभ्योऽधिको योगी ज्ञानीभ्योऽपि मतो अधिक कर्मेभ्यश्चाधिको योगी तस्मा योगी भवार्जुन.
A yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than the fruitive worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi.
योगिनापि सर्वेषां मद्गतेनान्तरात्मना श्रद्धावान् भजते यो मां स मे युक्तमतो मतः.
And of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion.
Thank
Hare
you so
Krishna.
much. Thank you.
Forgive me for my mistakes.
Thank you,
Mataji.
Leena Mataji. Thank you, Hitesh Prabhu. Very nice recitation. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All right. Let me just get my screen up in a minute. Okay, so we are actually coming to the almost the end of chapter 6, the final verses. In fact, we are going to be completing the entire Bhagavad Gita. So well done, all of you. We will complete Bhagavad Gita very soon. Chapter 6 will be our last chapter. So that's great that you've been taking part for so long, every day joining us. It's wonderful. So today we are going to do verse number 43. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse 43. Tatra tam buddhi samyogam labhate parvadehikam yatate cha tato bhuyah samsiddhau kuru nandana. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. On taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make So, okay, sorry, I'm just going to read the translation again. On taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Guru. Purport. Does anybody want to read this? It's a short purport. So
Yes, please, Mataji. Thank you.
okay, okay, go ahead.
Purport. Hare Krishna. King Bharata, who took his third birth in the family of a good Brahmana, is an example of good birth for the revival of previous transcendental consciousness. King Bharata was the emperor of the world, and since his time, this planet has been known among the demigods as Bharata Varsha. Formerly, it was known as Ilavrata Varsha. The emperor, at an early age, retired for spiritual perfection but failed to achieve success. In his next life, he took birth in the family of a good Brahmana and was known as Jada Bharata because he always remained secluded and did not talk to anyone. And later on, he was discovered as the greatest transcendentalist by King Rahugana. From his life, it is understood that transcendental endeavors or the practice of yoga never go in vain. By the grace of the Lord, the transcendentalist gets repeated opportunities for complete perfection in Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Santosh Mataji. Thank you. We'll recite our prayers before we discuss this verse. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubheva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. All right, I'm just going to request everybody to please keep yourselves on mute because otherwise there is quite a lot of disturbance that comes, and then it disturbs my flow of thought and it disturbs everybody else also. Thank you very much. All right, so when I first read this verse, the most important thing that this verse is saying is doing is Krishna is giving us so much hope. The previous two verses, the same thing. What happens if we are not able to complete our Krishna consciousness? So it's these few verses are verses of hope. And in the Bhagavad Gita and so many places, it's the same thing where Krishna is actually, giving us so much hope, because sometimes, I don't know if any of you experience it, but sometimes I do, where I feel like, I'm trying so much, but I'm not succeeding. And I feel a bit like, what do I do? But then I read such things and then I get hope, Anyways, so here in this particular verse, so in the previous two verses, it's been discussed what happens, to, like, if the yogi has not completed his Krishna conscious journey. So, Tatra. So here it says Tatra, thereupon. So what happens? So what is being discussed in this particular verse is Krishna is describing the Tatra. What happens after Suchinam Shrimatam Gehe or Yoginam Eve Kula Bhavati Dhimatam. So what is being described now is that, okay, he takes birth in a righteous family or in a rich aristocratic family, or he takes birth in a family of yogis, transcendentalists who are great in wisdom. So that we have understood. But this particular verse actually is describing once he has taken birth in this kind of family, then what happens? So, Tatra, what happens after that? And let's see what Krishna is describing here, that what happens after that. So here it is being described, and I have on purpose written these Sanskrit words because they're so important sometimes to just, the way Prabhupada really translates, it's so clear. So it says here, Buddhi Samyogam Labhate Paurva Dehikam. So it says there is a revival of consciousness from the previous body. So what is to be understood, what we have understood till now is that constantly there is a change of body. At death, there is a change of body. We are not aware of what our previous body was. We are not aware of what our next body is going to be. We don't know. But there is some continuity. There is something that is continuous. And interestingly, the analogy to explain this phenomena is used by our acharyas, and the interesting analogy is how when we wake up from our deep sleep, we can immediately resume our normal activities. For example, a student who has spent his, let's say today at university, studying, revising for an exam, really studying hard, and then has come home and gone to sleep, deep sleep. The next day, when he wakes up, he again immediately, his mind immediately goes back to what he has learned the previous day. And if he has an exam and he goes to write this paper, he is able to remember everything that he has learned in the previous day. It is almost like he did not take any break at all. He continues with his normal activities as if there was no break at all. As if like he did not go into this deep sleep, as if nothing happened. He just continues. Sometimes I was listening to this lecture by His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj, and he said that sometimes we take these things so much for granted without realizing what a miracle this is. Having memory is such a miracle because, and this is where you see the hand of God, because if the Paramatma from within would not give you this memory, you wouldn't remember anything. Forget about giving the memory. If the Paramatma from within would not wake you up, if he decides that this soul is not going to get up, one wouldn't even get up, right? So when you think of this analogy, and we'll come to why it is being described over here, when we are the sleep stages, there are 3 stages of sleep that are described, which is, I think we've done this in one of our sessions. I can't remember when we did it, but I think we've done this. So there are 3 stages of sleep: Jagrati, Swapna, and Sushupti. Jagrati is, of course, when you're awake. Swapna is when you're in that, not in a deep sleep, and that is why you're able to remember your dreams. You suddenly wake up and you think, oh, okay, I was dreaming. That's your Swapna stage. And Sushupti is when you are in a very, very deep sleep, right? The deep sleep, and Prabhupada describes this in many of his purports. He says that deep sleep is almost like you are dead, right? The deep sleep is almost like you're dead. The difference is that between 2 sleeps, the difference is that there's 2 days, one day, yesterday and today, between the sleep. between the death of a person, it's two lives. Because as we understand it, death is not the end. It's just a break, like how sleep is a break between your 2 days. Death is a break between your two lives. You see? And again, it is described that not just death, even when there is partial annihilation, when Lord Brahma, the night of Lord Brahma, when there is partial annihilation, or even like when there is complete annihilation, when the whole universe goes back into the body of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, even at that time, the amazement is that we are still carrying some memories. Our subtle body is still taking with it some of the samskaras from its previous lives. You see, there's still some memories. So whether it is death, whether there is partial annihilation, or there is complete annihilation. So Krishna is explaining in this verse that the same way that we remember things after we wake up, the same way we remember things after death, partial annihilation, and complete annihilation. And Krishna actually is saying this, that it comes from me. And we know this very famous verse from chapter 15, verse 15. Sarvasya chaham mridi channivishto mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedescha sarve rahameva vedyo vedanta kridveda vid eva chaham. So Krishna is saying that I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So the memory is given to us by Krishna himself. So what happens is that we remember what we should be doing in our life. What are some of our unfulfilled desires? These memories are given to us by the Lord. You see, in all aspects, obviously, we are dependent on Krishna. Now, some may think that, these memories, I don't remember something like this. These memories could come to you in a very, very subtle form. It does not come to you in a form where, you say that, yeah, I got it. I remember what I've forgotten last life. It doesn't happen like that. It's very subtle. Like, for example, sometimes, when we have these various sanskaras, like for a young child, and I think this is the Annaprashan sanskar, or another one where, there sometimes they have on one side, they'll keep some books and things. Another side, they may have like, money or gold or, those kind of things. And the child is just left on the floor, and the child crawls towards one or the other thing. Now, this is not obviously the be all and end all that you decide, okay, this is what the child is going to do. But based on that, you kind of see that this child has got more inclination towards, like, let's say if there's Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, or there's some books, and you think, okay, more inclination towards knowledge. Whereas in the other case, there may be more inclination towards business or towards something else. So like that, in Vedic times also, this used to happen. And that is where you kind of realize that there is the soul, because it is carrying its memories from its past life, the subtle body. The soul doesn't carry it, obviously, because the soul is pure, but it's the subtle body which is carrying it. And because of that, obviously, we've got this next body based on what our desire was. So there is this memory which kind of drives us to do something. Some people do, some people are attracted to devotion right from the time they are children. Whereas some people, no matter how much you ask them to chant, even in their old age or even literally on the deathbed, they will refuse to chant the name of the Lord. It just doesn't happen. Obviously, because they have to deal with their karmas from the past life. But all of this is coming, and Krishna is giving us this memory from within. So the point that we're trying to make here is that just exactly how the memory is given to us when we wake up, same way we have our memory from our past lives as well. And then the next things that in this verse is being said is yatate cha tata bhuya samsido. Once he realizes this, once he realizes that he needs to perfect his Krishna consciousness, or he needs to take from where he left off, he endeavors for perfection. He strives towards that. Yes, it may happen that for many years you don't realize it and you may not actively pursue it. We've seen in our own lives around us also, some devotees will take up Krishna consciousness right from their childhood. Some may come into it when they're 20, 30, 40, 50, 70. You just don't know. And like we said, that's because of the karma that has to be worked out. It also depends on how much progress we have made in our previous lives. So when the time is right, when it is the suitable time, then Krishna will intervene in that life, in that jiva's life, to give him devotion. And like here Prabhupada is also saying, endeavor is the only qualification for spiritual perfection. So once you realize that, then you start making the endeavor. And the best way to understand this again is, let's say that a person has got a bank account. He's opened an account in a bank and he has put in a lot of money over there. The only way that he can take the money out from that bank account is by the use of a checkbook. Okay, I know the times for checkbook is long gone, but let's take this probability. So he can only access to the money by using a checkbook. And now for some reason, he has forgotten his checkbook. He's just placed it somewhere and he's forgotten it. However, the money is still safely there. It's, he may have forgotten it, but the money is still there. Same like, let's say that you bought some share certificates, or you bought some, postal, you've put money in the post office and you've got those kind of certificates and whatever, and you've just put it somewhere and you've forgotten about it. But the point is that that money is still there. And the moment you find either your checkbook or your certificate, you realize, oh, I have this much money. Now I can encash it. So same way, whatever stock of bhakti that we have done in our previous life is stored in Lord Krishna's bank. It's stored in Lord Krishna's bhakti bank, And the best thing is that the bank that we have here in the material world, when we withdraw some money out of that bank, the amount obviously reduces. In the bhakti bank, nothing reduces. It just stays as it is. Not only in one lifetime, it stays as it is lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Whatever you deposit in this bank becomes a credit for you forever, eternally. And then the moment you remember, the moment you find that checkbook, the moment you find that certificate, you can pick up right from there. So you start immediately just from there, right? It doesn't matter whether, you've spent your previous lifetimes, you've forgotten whatever. So the point here is that, like in the previous verses, Krishna is saying that either he takes birth in, Sachinam, Srimatam Gehe, or he takes birth in the family of transcendentalists. That bhakti is there in the heart. It may, for some years, temporarily, may have been forgotten, may have been covered, or maybe you're not aware of it, but that stock is there. And at the right time, through various ways, Krishna uses his own ways. Either, you meet a devotee, or you have prasad, or, there is some kind of intervention. You are given a book by the devotees, and immediately your dormant Krishna consciousness is awakened. Because like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita many times, that Krishna consciousness is there in everybody, is just in a dormant state and it needs to be awakened. That's all, right? So if someone doesn't have, what happens is, if obviously there are various kinds of people, if someone doesn't have a large deposit, then it will take him time for the dormant Krishna consciousness to be awakened. But if in your previous lives you have done a lot of bhakti or devotional activities, then your dormant Krishna consciousness is awakened very, very easily, right? However, the point is that this bhakti is carried from one life to the other. It does not end when you change bodies. And in the purport, Prabhupada is talking about Bharat Maharaj. The entire purport is about Bharat Maharaj. Now, with Bharat Maharaj, what happened? So, I know a lot of you know the story of Bharat Maharaj, but for those who don't know, let's go into the story in some detail, because the whole purport is about Bharat Maharaj. So, Bharat Maharaj was the king of the entire Bharatvarsh. He was the son of Rishabdev. Rishabdev is an incarnation of Krishna himself. And thus Bharat Maharaj was coming in the family of very, very learned kings, pious kings. And when he was very young, he decided to give up his kingdom, renounce everything, and go to the forest to pursue spiritual realization, because he realized that this material life is temporary. And so he wanted to pursue spiritual realization. While he was meditating in the forest, one day, it so happened that a deer was just near this river, and she heard, and this deer was pregnant, and she heard the loud growl of a lion. The lion was chasing her to eat her. And this deer then, fearing for her life, she jumped into the water. Because of the fear, because of all that was happening to her, at that time she gave birth to this baby deer. And she crossed the river, and when she went to the other side, she realized that she's given birth to this baby deer, who she didn't have the strength to go back and bring the baby deer to safety. And because of this separation, she just gave up her body there. All this was being observed by Bharat Maharaj. And when Bharat Maharaj saw this little baby deer, he did contemplate, what should I do? As a transcendentalist, understanding, that obviously in every living entity, there is the Lord, So obviously he's thinking, what should I do? Should I save? But, it's my duty to protect and save, or I've come here to get away from all these things. But eventually he decided that he should protect this baby deer. And he took the deer and he went back to his ashram. Now, what's happening over here? You'll see that he started associating with this deer. Instead of performing his, this association with the deer led to complete attachment. So constantly Bharat Maharaj would be in anxiety if the deer went away, ran away somewhere. He would constantly be in anxiety. Is the deer okay? Has a lion eaten him? Is he going to come back? So associating with the deer led to attachment. He was completely attached to the deer. And then what happened is that because of the attachment, he got distracted. He was in the jungle to perform various austerities in order to progress in his spiritual path. But because he was so attached to the deer, he got distracted from his duties, and he only started focusing on the deer, constantly thinking about the deer, worried about the deer, and eventually he was not able to perform his spiritual activities. right? And then what happened with him then was that he was so completely attached to the deer that one day when the deer was away, he went looking for the deer. While out in the jungles, he was on his last breath. He was leaving his body, but even when he was leaving his body, he could only think of the deer and nothing else, right? And like it says in the Bhagavad Gita 8.6, yam yam vapu smaran bhavam tyajate ante kalevaram tam tam evami kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. So with Bharat Maharaj, because at the time of death he could not think of anything else except the deer, in his next life he was born as a deer. But by the mercy of Krishna, by the grace of Krishna, and because he must have been at that stage where he had performed various austerities in his previous life, devotional services, even in the body of a deer, Bharat Maharaj could remember his past life. Right? So Bharat Maharaj could remember that in his past life, he was the king, he was Bharat Maharaj, and he had come to the jungle, and he remembered everything. So even as a deer, what he thought and what he decided was that I have, failed in my last life to complete my spiritual progress, to complete my journey. In this life, I'm not going to make the same mistake. So he didn't want to be in the deer consciousness. So he became a sadhu deer, right? So rather than going around with his dear friends, running here and there in the forest, what he did is he started associating with the sadhus who lived in the jungles. He started listening to their discussions and, constantly being in the association of the sadhus. And then what happened was, then when he left the body of the deer, he was then born as the son of a Brahmana. As it says in the purport, Prabhupada says he was born as the son of a Brahmana and he was called Jada Bharat. Now, again, when he was born as Jada Bharat, he remembered his past two lives. He remembered that he was, in one of his lives, he was the king, Bharat Maharaj. In his second life, he was the deer. And now he was born as Jada Bharat. Because he had the memories of his past lives, he decided that this life, I am going to only focus on spiritualism, on enlightening myself, on realizing myself. So what he decided is that, I've learned my lesson. I'm not going to get entangled this time. I'm not going to get attached. I am going to pretend to be completely dumb, so that nobody bothers me, nobody troubles me, and they leave me to my own devices. His father, the Brahmin, he was a very humble man. He tried his best to teach Jad Bharat the right things to do. Like he would say to Jad Bharat, you must first have a bath and then eat. Jad Bharat would do the exact opposite, right? So then everybody thought of him as being completely dumb and useless. When his father left his body, then the brothers, Jad Bharat brothers, then treated him as somebody who was of no use, who was kind of useless. So what they made him do at times was like in their farms, they would make him stand like a scarecrow who would at least scare away the birds who would come to eat the seeds or whatever the crops that was there. And that is what Jad Bharat did. He didn't even mind it. He was okay with it because he was left alone. He did not have any issues with that, because in this life he wanted to he didn't want to waste it. Now why we are talking about this is because in this verse Krishna is saying that, it says buddhi samyogam labate porva dehikam. So there is a revival of consciousness from the previous body. So in the case of Jad Bharat, we can see that how the consciousness from his previous two bodies, as King Bharat and as the deer, there is a revival. And that is why as Jad Bharat, what he does is, yatate, he endeavors for spiritual perfection, right? And eventually he does gain that spiritual perfection. So we don't want to go into the story of Rahuguna and Jad Bharat. Obviously, we know that Jad Bharat was such an enlightened person that when he was carrying Rahuguna, he at one point he enlightened Rahuguna about the life and the purpose of this life. But that is because although he pretended to be dumb, he was carrying over the samskaras of his previous two lives, right? And just to add to this, when Srila Prabhupada went initially to the West, and all of his devotees, all of his disciples that joined him were, we've heard about this, that so many of them were, taking drugs, they were hippies, although they were born in this, in America, which is considered to be the land of, of everything, like a very prosperous country. Prosperity was there. A lot of Prabhupada's disciples came from very, very well-to-do families, prosperous families. But they had turned to hippies. And Prabhupada said once, many times he says this, that my miracle is that I turned hippies into happies. But the main point here is what Prabhupada was saying was that these people, these disciples of mine, in their previous lives, they must have done devotional services. They must have performed bhakti, but they were not able to complete it. But here they are now, they've been given this opportunity to become my disciples, to take to Krishna consciousness and to attain perfection in bhakti. And in fact, in our scriptures also, we see examples of this. And we've seen this in the pastime of Lord Ram. When Lord Ram was traveling in the jungles, and he met all these sages. If you remember this, I think a lot of you remember this story. He met all these sages. Which jungle was that? Just doesn't come to me. But anyways, he met all these sages who, seeing Lord Ram, they wanted to serve him in the same way as Mother Sita was serving him. And then Lord Ram said, in this lifetime, I have taken the Ekapatni Vrata. So, that is not going to happen. But in the next yuga, when I come as Krishna, then you will all come as my, I will accept all of you at that time. And that's exactly what happened. All of these sages then became gopis. And once they became the gopis, then they were able to, then the relation that they had with Krishna was perfection. So when you have this bank balance in the Bhakti bank of Krishna, what happens is that you're given these opportunities to keep on increasing the bank balance. And it goes on increasing to such a stage where it reaches perfection. And even for it to reach perfection, Krishna himself intervenes. Like Krishna comes, whenever he descends with his associates. And the devotees who have deposited in the Bhakti bank are given the chance to take part in the Leelas of Krishna. When they take part in the Leelas of Krishna, they are able to associate with all his, his own enlightened devotees, perfected devotees, and then they are able to learn from them and then perfect themselves. For this, the example that we can see is when Lord Ram was in Mithila and he broke the bow, the bow that was meant to be broken, and the clause was that whoever breaks this bow will get the hand of Mother Sita in the marriage. A lot of ladies when they saw all this and they saw Lord Ram's character and personality, they also wanted to serve Lord Ram in that same mood. But obviously, again, that did not happen. But what is happening here is the fact that these ladies were present in the land of Mithila when the Leela of Lord Ram was happening is gives us the proof that these ladies are not just normal ladies. In their past lives, they have performed various devotional activities, and that is why they have the opportunity to be there even as audience in the Leela of Lord Ram. And then what happens in the next avatar, when Lord Ram, or when Krishna descends, these ladies get the opportunity to become gopis. And once they become gopis, and that is the perfection of life, because there is nothing higher than the love of gopis. The gopis, the love that they share for Krishna, is the highest love, is the highest kind of surrender. So I'll go back to the main point of this verse, and I'll read the translation again. On taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Kuru. So the point here is, this is an answer to Arjuna's question that what happens if one is not able to complete? You lose spiritually and you lose materially. So Krishna is saying that no, you do not lose at all. What happens is that whatever birth you take, you have the samskaras of your previous birth. You start your devotional service or your bhakti from where you left off. So if you left off at, say, 85, you start from 85 and you complete it to 100. So there is no loss or diminution. And there is one very beautiful verse in the Bhagavad Gita, which says this. Let's see if any of you remember it. Anybody remembers this verse? Which says that there is no loss or diminution in the path of bhakti. No? I'm sure quite a few of you remember it. You have recited this verse. So it is verse number 240, where it says, Neha Vikramo Nashosti Pratyavayana Vidyate Swalpam Apyasi Dharmasya Trayato Mahato Bhayat. It says that in this endeavor there is no loss or diminution. Even a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So Krishna again and again is promising us that on the spiritual path, there is no loss. Don't worry about it. Just keep performing your devotional services and keep making your deposits in Krishna's bank. I'll stop here. Thank you very much. I've gone a little beyond time, so forgive me for that. And if there are any comments or questions or realizations, please unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna, dear Madhu Kumari, please accept my humble question. All praise to Srila Prabhupada. Such a wonderful, it was really, really absolutely wonderful to listen to you. How well organized you are, how well organized you put the verses, the analogy, the Bharat Maharaj story, everything together is a really perfect class. I really appreciate your endeavor.
I'm a copy and paste person, Mataji. I'm just listening, and then just, putting things together.
Maybe, but you put it in a very right order to give the message. Thank you so much.
Glories to Srila Prabhupada's teachings.
Yes, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Mataji?
Yes, Harsha Mataji.
I just wanted to ask, when you say that if you've left off and then you carry on in an aristocracy family in the next birth, but what if it's the other way around, that, you're born to sort of religious parents, but the children or the child or somebody is totally the opposite? How is that placement?
So the point here is one must remember a couple of things, Harsha Mataji, because there are many factors that are acting. Your karma plays a very, very important part in what you're going to be in your next life, or what body you're going to have, or what family you go into. Your karma plays a very important part. Then obviously there is the intervention of Lord. it says in the Bhagavatam, karmana devi netrena. So based on your karma, but then there is the intervention of the Lord. And then finally, you may think that, yes, the parents are very religious, but the child is not. The point is that maybe at that moment, the child is not. It takes 1 second for somebody to change. And like we discussed that for many years, you may forget what you have done in your previous life, or whether you've done bhakti. But if it is, and like we said, Krishna consciousness or love for Krishna is dormant in everybody's heart. But it depends on when the time is right for this particular person. The fact that he's born in a family of religious parents itself speaks for it that definitely in his previous life he has performed bhakti. Otherwise, he wouldn't be born in a family of transcendentalist or religious parents. But he has to work out his karmas. It could be karmas from his previous life, from so many lifetimes. So he has to wait for his karmas to burn out his karmas, and then he will take to devotional service. It may happen in this life, it may happen in another life. But the fact that, like you said, if he's born in a religious family means that it is going to happen.
Okay, thank you, Mataji.
Any other questions or comments or realizations? None? We have very quiet audiences these days. It's good. It's good to just absorb sometimes, but it's also good to share so everybody else can learn. Okay, if there are
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Sorry,
Hare
yes.
Krishna.
Yes, Rita Mataji.
Yes, I want to ask you a question. I don't understand one thing, that Bharat Maharaj was doing very good bhakti, but why does he have to become a deer? Because was he thinking of the deer at the time of death?
Yes.
Why doesn't Lord Krishna, pardon him a good favor so he can go back to Godhead straight away, because he does so much tapasya, so much bhakti, so much sacrifice. Why does Lord Krishna has to take so many tests before he was dying? I mean, he became the deer. He became the deer when he was dying. It was because what you're thinking at that time, at that moment, sometimes you're not in your senses.
So Rita, the main thing what we have to understand is that Krishna will take you back to Godhead once you attain perfection in devotion. If you've not attained perfection, then he is giving you opportunities to attain that perfection. In the case of Bharat Maharaj, when he had renounced and gone to the forest, he was on the path of spiritual realization. But rather than focusing on his austerities, he developed attachment. And when he developed attachment for this deer, obviously then he stopped performing his spiritual activities. So it was not like that he was still continuing to do his spiritual activities. He completely stopped it. He completely neglected it. And he only focused on his attachment to the deer. So he forgot Krishna. He forgot his dharma as being the servant of Krishna. He became the servant of the deer. And at the time of death, I agree with you that you can't really remember, or it's not in your control. But yes, that is very, very true. But at that time also, he was not even for a moment thinking of Krishna. He was only thinking of the deer. And also what we have to remember is that the pastimes in Bhagavatam are there to teach us lessons.
Yes.
You see, so this pastime of Bharat Maharaj, we are not there to, kind of say, oh, but Bharat Maharaj, why did he do this? It's just to teach us lessons. Like when we hear the pastime of Lord Indra. Lord Indra is a demigod. Why could he not recognize that this 7-year-old child, Krishna, is the supreme personality of Godhead? He didn't recognize that. And that is why he sent he sent all these clouds. And so these are pastimes to teach us lessons, that how one can become puffed up if you're in a position of Lord Indra. one can become distracted in your devotional activities, like how Lord Bharat was distracted. So the lessons that we have to learn is how I should not be in that position, how I should strive and endeavor to not be in that position.
Yes, Mataji, I understand. That's because if a person is thinking about his son
Yeah,
a lot,
yeah.
then what happens?
So then you come back, you remember that, that story. So there's this story where Narad Muni comes to this man and he says to him, that your time here on earth is done, you fulfilled all your responsibilities, come back with me, let's go back to Godhead. And he says, no, my children, I have to still look after them, I have to build their house, I have to get them married, I have to do all of these things. So Narad Muni comes back after the house is built, the children are married, everything happens, and he's come back and he says, no, I'm still not ready, I still have things to do. Narad Muni realizes that he's so attached. Eventually, this man dies of old age. He just dies. And
Yes.
still he's so attached that he comes back to that same house as a dog because he wanted to guard the house.
Oh.
You see? So he comes back as a dog. When he comes back as a dog, eventually when he gives up the body of a dog, he's still so attached. He comes back as a snake, right? And Narad Muni constantly is telling him, it's over now, it's done, at least come back now. Even when he comes back as the body of a snake, he says to the snake, he says, now your children are settled, everything is done, you come back with me. And the snake, doesn't want to. And at that time, what Narad Muni does is he calls out to the sons of this man. He says, there is a snake in your garden, a dangerous snake. And the same sons that this man is trying to protect and look after come and kill him with sticks and kill the snake.
Yes.
So what we
Yes,
are being
Mataji.
taught, so what we are being taught is that this attachment, like we saw in the slides, association leads to attachment leads to distraction.
Yes.
You see, so it does not mean that one becomes stone-hearted, but it means that your attachment to anybody is on the level of keeping Krishna in the center. Yes, he is my son, but he is part and parcel of Krishna, and my attachment to him should be at that level.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you very much. My Dandavan Pranam to you and Hare Krishna to all the assembled devotees. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You explain it very well, Mataji. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
Yes, Seema ji, yes.
Very nice class. I really liked your examples,
Mhm.
especially when you gave the example about Bhagwan Ram, that he took the vow of having one wife only, and then he came as a Krishna, and he had so many gopis and so many wives. I've never heard it before, but it's really with me. Yes.
Yeah. No, this is a wonderful story of how these sages then became the gopis. Obviously, what we are trying to see here in this particular related to this verse is how they are perfecting their bhakti. And when they perfected their bhakti, they got the direct association of Krishna. They became the highest devotees of Krishna and were able to then be with Krishna eternally.
Yes, I see. I just have one question. Like we are just talking about don't get attached to anything. So, like I like to do gardening, and I like to keep my plants, especially any plants which can stay as long as with me as possible. And I like to grow plants and then look after them and everything. But since I came in Krishna consciousness, I just realized I don't look after them as much because my attention is towards that. I need to read, I need to chant, and I need to attend my class. So sometimes I think I'm not actually justifying with my plants. What do you think about it? What would you say that how should I justify it?
So, no. The thing is that there is no harm in liking to look after your plants and whatever else. What you could do is, like we always say, dovetail it towards Krishna's service. So if you've got plants, if you like to do gardening, have plants which have flowers, offer those flowers to Krishna. So what you're doing is you are dovetailing your liking towards serving Krishna. Some people love to cook. So you cook and you offer to Krishna. You like to sing, you sing for Krishna. You like to read, you sit and read in front of Krishna. So try and dovetail all your activities towards serving Krishna. So the point is that when we talk about attachment, what we want to say is that you don't give up anything. You still remain attached, but you bring Krishna in the center. So I like gardening. I'm going to continue to garden, but I will grow these plants so that I can use them to serve Krishna.
I see. Okay. Yeah. It's
And
really
even when
nice.
you're gardening, you can have your headphones and you can still be listening to lectures. So you're still doing that and you're gardening so that you can grow lovely flowers for Krishna, bring the flowers to the temple. They'll use it for making garlands, offer it to on your altar. So use everything for Krishna's service. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. He's happy with even a leaf. So, do that. Make garlands out of leaves and offer it to Krishna.
Oh, that's good. Okay, nice
Yeah.
to know. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna, Madhu Kumari. I was just listening to the Mataji about the plants. I have a lot of plants. What I do, I know the offered water, Krishna Prasad. I give them those water, then I chant. So that way those plants will be elevated.
Correct.
Even if they have come contact with me, somehow Krishna arranged that. So we could do that and help those to.
That's very good. That's very nice, Palika Mataji. Every living entity, and that is why we are advised to chant, loudly, so that whatever living entities are around us, they also are benefited by the chanting of the holy name, by listening to the holy name.
Also, my understanding of all the stories in the scripture is just, if it is in the scripture, then we take more on board that these things can happen, so we become more aware of because it's in the scripture. So that's my understanding.
Thank you, Palika Mataji. Surbhi Mataji, you have said, is compassion for deer viewed as attachment? No, compassion is not viewed as attachment, but in the case of Bharat Maharaj, initially it started with compassion, then it led to attachment, then it led to complete absorption in the deer. And that is what was not right for him. If he would have kept it as at the level of compassion and attachment, where he was able to still perform his duties in his spiritual practices, that was fine. Yeah. Okay. Bhavani Mataji, you're saying Jad Bharat was aloof to protect his bhakti. How can we protect our bhakti? Bhavani Mataji, one thing that I have realized is that in this day and age, in Kali Yuga, I speak for myself, if I did not have the association of devotees, I would not be able to protect my bhakti at all. So I would not want to be aloof like Jad Bharat, because I am not at that consciousness. So for us to protect our bhakti, the best thing is to be constantly in the association of devotees. Prabhupada always said, sadhu, shastra, and sangha. So try and listen to our acharyas, read our shastras, be in the association of devotees who inspire you to constantly endeavor to reach the stage of perfection, what Krishna is talking about in this verse. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. If no other questions, then we can stop here and we shall meet again next week. Harsha Mataji, no, I don't, Harsha Mataji. I am not a very social media kind of person, I think. So I don't know all these things. But all our lectures are recorded. Jyoti Mataji is very, very kindly doing this. We are all very grateful to her. She records all these lectures. She puts it on a YouTube channel. So we do have a YouTube channel for our CHAD classes.
Yes, it's very useful. It's very, very useful.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I think she puts it on the group every day, the recording. She puts it on the group after the class. So yeah, that's what we have. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Okay, Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you for joining, and we shall see you next week. Vancha kalpatarubhascha kripa sindhube eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaः.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Wonderful.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna
Thank you.
Mataji. Thank you
Hare
very
Krishna.
Hare
much.
Krishna Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you so much,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.